Hi, this is Larry. I'd like to talk to you today a little bit about methods and what they are and how they basically work. There's a lot more to them, but we're only going to cover just basically what a method is. As you can see, when we start up a Visual Studio and we get a new project going, we set up a class, we know that we're going to see the using system, which is calling to the libraries to use different properties and classes out there. Then we also see that we're going to have a namespace, and the namespace is just basically something that contains and helps all the contains different classes, different types of structs, etc., different types of objects that can be utilized within an application. All right, so that they all can work together. And if you see this, we declare the namespace. Anything inside the brackets here can be utilized within that. But we can't run anything inside a namespace. For instance, if we tried to do a command that actually allowed us to display something on console, okay, if we did this, we would have, then all of a sudden we wouldn't be able to run anything because see all the error messages is because we have down here it says a namespace cannot directly contain members such as fields or methods. So we can't put any data up in here, and we can't put any type of process such as writing to the output to the console. So what that means is that the namespace is just basically keep track of things, all the different objects within an application, and make sure they work together. Now the next thing we can have, so we can have a class within the namespace. So we're going to have this class in this namespace. We've called this output already, and everything within the brackets then can run. But when we look at this, can we actually do the same thing we tried up there? Can we run a direct line? Okay, let's a statement here. Oops. No, we're getting all these errors. We can't do anything with it. So it's the same thing as with namespace. You cannot run directly a statement with inside the class itself. And this means then you have to put everything inside of a method. All right. And what are methods then? Methods are collections of data and the process associated with the methods, just as similar to the class, but on a different scale. So what we use most of the time when we're programming, we're using methods. In other languages, we call them functions, but they're the same thing. It's where you have a collection of data, and you have a collection that's the smallest unit where you're going to be putting data and processes together to work. And you can have methods that will stand by itself, and you have methods that call other methods, etc. And that's the basis of how we're using things, is the method, or sometimes we'll just refer to them as a function. All right. So let's create a method here, and let's just say we want to display a method called display console. And we want to display the console just for good here. Okay. And at the end of every method, you're going to put some parentheses at the end of it. And you can see all of a sudden we must have a return type looking for a semicolon. Well, let's start with the beginning here where it says return type. Well, return type means that what are you going to return from this? Does the method, when it closes, return any data or any data type? And we're going to do this one so it doesn't return any data, so that's why it's void. Otherwise, you'd be putting this area data types, okay, the type of data being returned. Now everything looks like it's going to run, but it's still looking for the semicolon. But we don't want to give it a semicolon here. We want to actually put brackets, okay? And we're going to go down here and put a bracket down here. One bracket, and the other one comes up with Visual Studio. So just like we have with class and namespace, everything within a method must be held within these brackets. And if you want to, and you can put a comment in here, such as end of display console. Just to keep track yourself. Keeping track of some of these brackets all the time becomes complex because you delete things, you don't know where you put things, you edit things, cut and paste. So a lot of times it's good to put a little comment. The other thing is, before we continue then too, is that what I want to do is say is that there's the void here is needed because it's referring to saying that it's public. Well, in this case, we don't want to make it, we'll just make it public, but I tell people to put this clause in here, meaning that you want to be able to put a clause in to let people know whether this is visible or not, publicly or privately, or static. Those are the three popular ones. There's other ones protected. But we're going to just say here it's public right now, okay? And I tell people to put it in there. So that's where you see public void display console and then the brackets. Now we simply want to put out there something to output. In this case, we're going to put console write line, common friend from the beginning, and we'll put a semicolon at the end, because all this is basically what we're doing to make this work is that we're calling a method. This is a method inside of another class, which is actually inside of the system. Okay, so console.writeLine. Okay, and in this case too is what these brackets or these parentheses actually mean is that you can pass data inside of it. And we'll be talking about that at other times when we talk about data more. All right, but for this case, is what we're doing here is just to put something on the screen. We want to just put a not a parentheses, but a quotation marks, and then we're going to type something there. This is a test of your system. Okay, just type something in there, and you can see we have it all together here, and that's all this would display. All right. Now, when this runs all by itself. I've already got it set up to run it this way, but what I want to show you is that you could run this so that it would just display this, because I have it called already, meaning that you cannot run anything. You can't. This doesn't display unless you have something call it. For instance, if I tried running this, there would be this app. Nothing would come up because display console is never called, meaning that somebody has to use the method. Something has to call it. Well, what I'm going to do is create another method, and this is called a constructor method. We're going to make it public, and we don't need to have a return type on it, and we're just going to put in output. That's the name of the, output. That's the name of the class, and we'll put the parentheses afterwards, and then we just come down and put a bracket in there, and voila. Now, what I wanted to show you here is this, is that if you look at it, we have display console, and how we're going to call this is the same way that we're calling console write line, because we're actually going to call that. It's another application that was in class that was written by some other person or people, and we want to just display console, so we actually have to put this up here into display console. Okay, and we have to call it. So what calling means to call it. You see it highlights here, and you click on that. Put your parentheses afterwards and a semicolon to end the sentence or statement, and there you have it. So this is a very common use. Is you're going to create a method, but something needs to call a method, and usually it's another method. In this case, it's calling it, because that's the way they work. So in this case, what we're going to do is this is the constructor method, meaning that an object of this type will utilize and immediately run this when it's done, when it's called. Okay, so I'll just hit go, and we'll see what it'll start up here and see how this runs. So you can see right up here on the top, I'm going to scroll over a little bit, this is a test of your system, and I have it set up automatically to in the where it's called from when its object is created, to just wait for some user input. And there you go. And that's it. I want to talk about methods today. So as you start making methods to put things on a screen, remember that you need to have a method for all the actions you're going to do. And then you're going to have somebody call the method. In this case, another method is going to call this method to utilize it.